Nobody is dehumanizing white people by calling them a cracker. You want to know why? You want to know why? You want to know why? Because there's no violence coming from that whatsoever.
That's
None.
not necessary to the definition you read, sir.
That's not necessary?
To the definition you read. Read it again.
To the definition I read that specifically says marginalized?
Doesn't say has to be violence.
Again,
you just made that up.
Are white people...
Does it say there has to be violence? No, it doesn't. You just made that part up again.
Andrew Wilson obliterates this woke black activist for his double standards against white people in this heated debate on racism, as Andrew Wilson calls out the double standards this scholar uses to justify treating white people differently by exposing his lie, and tears apart his argument, trying to redefine racism because he's losing. Let's get in.
All of it's based around feelings, sir. No matter which side you're on.
No, it's not.
Yes,
that's not how that works at all.
Yeah, well,
that's not how that works.
Then let me give you an example. Okay, if you were a person who didn't understand, if you were a black person, let's say, who didn't understand what the N-word meant, right? How could you have any feelings that it was racial or not racial?
So again, this goes back to, the origin of a slur, right?
That's the etymology of a word. It has no bearing on the perception of the word.
The word cracker quite literally has no bearing, no weight to calling somebody.
If I believe that
there's no weight.
If you're saying it to me in order to make a comment about me racially, which is a slur, then that is a racist slur, sir.
What is the origin of cracker?
The etymology wouldn't matter in this context.
It absolutely matters.
Why would it matter?
Is the origin of cracker?
Why would it matter if you're using a racially charged slur towards a person? Why would the etymology matter?
Rico. History and context absolutely matters.
Why?
The reason
why would it matter here? This is just an appeal to authority.
Can I explain it to you?
Yeah.
Okay, then here we go. So first off, cracker started out as a classist term. That was a classist slur, right? For rich white people, for poor white people. Long before Europeans came to the Americas and started using slaves, right?
Granted. Go ahead.
There was something called indentured servitude up north in the European areas, right? Where you had a lot of poor white people trying to earn the scraps from the hardship jobs that they were working for rich white people. And even then they were calling the poor white people crackers, right? Now, when they got to America and they did their little genocide on indigenous people and then got lazy, couldn't pick their own cotton, so they decided to travel the seas again and start to enslave Africans and bring them over to, America, right? They established the race as the hierarchy of privilege based off of their skin color and complexion. But what never changed was the classism amongst rich and poor white people, because what happened was those lazy rich white people started having their slaves building their houses, their mansions, their cities and stuff like that. But the jobs that they mostly gave for the whip master, the slave patrol, those were the poor white people. And even then they were still being called crackers, right? And even then when it came to, the crack of a whip, from the whip master, the torturer, the disciplinary of the slaves, that's where it came from. That's why slaves also started calling the whip master cracker, right? So it has nothing to do with the skin color. It has to do with the fact that it was prominently poor white people having the job of catching slaves and torturing slaves and having to whip slaves. So that's where that came from, right? That's what that is.
Except you're omitting a very key point here, which is that by the 1940s, particularly during the Great Migration, the term took on a new meaning in African American communities. It was used to refer to bigoted white people in the South, and it was used as a racially charged slur.
Bigoted white people in the South? You mean the poor white people that were initially slave patrol, right?
Sure, but what they're doing is they're using it as a racially charged slur, sir. That's when the context
changed. How is that racially charged?
Because they meant it to only mean you're a white low-class person. That therefore that's racially classist. Charged.
That's classist.
Then why wouldn't they just say you're a poor person?
Because cracker was already there.
That makes no sense. Why would they include that it was YT specific if it wasn't racially charged, sir?
Hold on.
That makes no sense. That makes no sense.
Rico,
sir,
in my ear. Relax.
I would like an answer to my question.
Rico, I need you to calm down, right?
I already know it.
I am going to answer your question. I already, so just so we're clear, right?
Yeah.
Racism is not classism. The fact that you even brought up the Great Depression and all that matter, literally proves my point, how the wealth and poor gap literally grew even significantly more. So there were lesser rich people that were getting more rich off the Great Depression, calling more poor white people crackers. And black people simply just adapted that because they were still being bigoted.
Yeah,
poor
but different
white
groups,
people.
different groups mean things differently. For instance, the N word with the A on the end means something completely different to the African American community than when white people say it, and then with the hard R as well, it means something totally different. When you use a chart, hang on, let me make the argument. If it's the case that you are loading this term with a racial categorization, YT poor people equals C word, then what you're doing there is you're creating a racial categorization, and it's a racial slur. I don't see how you could ever get around it. Then why does it only include YT people? Then why isn't it for Mexicans, sir? Why is it only for YT people? Why don't they call Mexicans crackers, sir?
Rico, you're crashing out. Relax.
Just answer the question, dude.
Right? That slur was meant for poor white people. You literally just said
it's racially charged.
They're poor. It's rooted in classism. It's poor.
Who cares what it's rooted in? I already
crackers.
Again.
And let's be very clear about something. Mexicans have their own slurs. Chinese people have their own slurs.
I agree.
Which a lot of white people came up
with.
Are those racist? Based off of their
racist slurs?
Racist. Based off their
Are those racist slurs?
They have their own complete different slurs
that
white people have used. But it was only ever white people that used cracker.
Are those
for
racist
poor
slurs?
White people.
Those other slurs, are those racist? Those other slurs used for other races?
For Mexicans and Asians?
Yeah.
Obviously.
Okay, so then why is it when you charge those with a racial categorization, are those made racist? But somehow when this is charged with a racial categorization, meaning it's meant to specifically attack you for being white and poor, why is that not now a racial slur, sir?
So now we can get into that, right? There's a distinct difference because of that. It's called dehumanization. And what I mean by that is we see time and time again that there were certain slurs being used for people of color, including black and brown folks, in which there were also laws set up that said that black and brown people were lesser than human, quite literally known as the 3/5 compromise, right? The difference in dehumanization compared to black folks, compared to poor white folks.
Dude, that was for voting purposes so that the North wasn't outvoted by the South. Give me a break. What are you talking about?
So they made the slaves 3/5 to give the South slave owners a one-up.
No, what the whole purpose of that was to try to make sure that the South could not rule over the North because they had so many slaves.
So that's why they made the slaves 3/5.
Yes, I agree. What? It was, but it was about voting. It was about voting. That was what the classification was for.
So hold on. Stop. Let's be clear.
Okay.
It was not just about voting, right? Because even after the South got their little one-up, their little help in Congress, people still used that law to justify the state-sanctioned violence that they committed on slaves and black people.
Yeah, southern states.
Southern states. 3/5.
Yeah,
they were literally considered 3/5 of a person.
Yeah, but nobody's arguing
that. The law
that.
said that they were. Then you shouldn't be trying to defend the 3/5 compromise.
I'm not defending
That's the whole point
I'm
here.
explaining the historic context.
Here. Hold on, listen to me. That's the whole point here.
Okay.
That's the whole point here, right? Black and brown people and slaves were literally less than human. They were considered 3/5 of a human being. They were considered 3/5 of a human. Okay, and so guess who still got jobs? The crackers. Guess who still got jobs? The poor white people.
And what would this have to do?
Because they were still seen as human beings compared to African slaves
why do you keep
Mexican
muting me, dude?
peoples.
Stop muting me.
Because you're
such a bad faith. Well, dude, you won't even let me get three words out. You won't even let me get 3 words out before you mute me.
Oh man.
Now,
I need to turn down this phone.
What about Peckerwood?
There we go.
Is Peckerwood racial?
Peckerwood, I haven't even heard Peckerwood.
You never heard the word Peckerwood?
Who was that for? No, not like that.
Can you look up the word?
Sure. Am I going on Urban Dictionary?
No. It's a very common anti-white slur.
It's a common anti-white slur. Hold on a minute. Let's see here. Peckerwood. wood. Hold on a minute. Let's see here. Peckerwood. It says a white person, especially a poor one.
Mm-hmm. So when a black person specifically uses this in order to create a class, in order to point out that you're a YT poor person, how's that not racially motivated?
Do you realize? Hold on. I don't think you just realized. You just proved my point even further. That's considered another classist term.
No, it's considered racially charged.
That's not racially. It's literally.
Are you referring to a race?
Especially a poor one.
Are you referring to a race?
It says here, white person, especially a poor one.
Yeah,
that's classist,
so are we referring
to?
So if I had a that referred to Chinese people as being people, let's say,
dude, are they here in America?
Yeah, there's Chinese people here in America.
So you do realize they've said that to Chinese people, right?
Is it racist? Is my question.
It's racist. It's xenophobic.
Yeah.
Like, what are we talking about?
So then what you're doing... hang on. Let me make the argument now.
Rico,
my turn to make the argument.
This is how,
you're just not letting me make the argument. You contradicted yourself.
Let me know down below if you agree with Andrew Wilson that this woke black obvious racist is basically lying and using double standards. Like, he just contradicted himself. And it's just funny how these people who, they always want to play the victim. They always want to act like, it's everything's white people's fault, all this crap. And yet, anytime it comes to white people, they're so quick to treat them differently. Like, as soon as he didn't even know what the word was, he never even heard of peckerwood. And as soon as he said, "Oh, you just proved my point," that's a classist term. How would you even know? You literally just saw it. You didn't even know the word existed. But as soon as he saw white, he, instead of putting it in a racial category, like Andrew Wilson is pointing out, he automatically treats it differently instead of all the other races and puts it into a class category. In other words, if it's white people, it's automatically class and you're the highest class, but everyone else is in a racial category because essentially, since white people are the dominant class, everyone else is just below them by definition. Like, this seems to be, in my opinion, let me know what you think, like the way that he's looking at this. But instantly that proves he treats white people differently. He doesn't see the racism that he himself is doing, or more or less cares. I mean, you can see the way he's just laughing and jostling about, cracker, peckerwood. He really doesn't care. He just sees the class difference as a justification to look at everything in a racial way, therefore justifying whatever behavior he wants to show and treat to white people. That's all I'm seeing out of this. But hit that like button and notification bell if you're enjoying the video. And if you want to help support the channel, check out the link down below in the description, and let's get back in.
Here's how I know.
Sir, let me make the argument.
No, argue.
I'm not allowed to make arguments. Rico, only you are.
Rico, this is how I know you're arguing in bad faith, because rich white people have used peckerwood as well. Rich white people have used peckerwood as well,
and
dude.
BLK people have used the hard ER before, dude.
Because dude, they're black.
Yeah,
they're black.
Yeah, and they're white. So therefore, if they're white and they say it, can't be racist. If you're black and you say it, you can't be racist. So if it's racially charged from the other direction, then it has to be racist by your logic.
Rico.
No, you're not understanding, sir. Let me make the argument.
You're not understanding, dude.
What? You're just all you do is cut me off when I'm making an argument
for you. I made it very clear for you.
How do you know what my position even is? You won't let me make the argument. Let me make the argument, then respond.
Go ahead.
If it's the case, you just contradicted yourself. If it's the case that you say, the hard ER, if BLK people say it, it's totally fine because they're part of that race. Then it would equally apply that it would be perfectly acceptable for YT people to say would or say the C word because they're part of that race as well. However, the second you say it becomes racially motivated is when the YT person says it back, but somehow it's not racially motivated when black people say it to white people, and it's only racially motivated when YT people say like ching chong to Chinese people, for instance, in order to produce, hey, this is like a low-class Chinese person. Somehow you're making the conflation that it is the case that it can only be class used against YT people instead of a racial motivation, and that is definitionally not true based on the definition you wrote or read. Now go ahead.
So, Rico, once again, you clearly have selective hearing because I have quite literally explained to you the origin of cracker and where it came from. Nobody was calling white people cracker. Nobody was calling white people cracker back then because they were white.
They
right?
do now.
They were calling. No.
Yes,
they
they do. Yes, they do. You're lying.
So, again,
You're just
hold on.
lying.
Hold on a
Yes,
minute.
they do.
Hold on a minute. Hold on. Stop. So, hold on. Are they dehumanizing white people by calling them cracker?
Yes, they're saying that they're low-class white people.
No, they're not.
Lesser than
No, they're
themselves.
not. No, they're not. No,
Then-
they're not.
oh, yeah?
No,
Then
they're
why
not.
bring
And you know
classes?
they aren't.
Yes, they are.
Aren't.
Yes, they are.
Aren't. They aren't, dude.
They are,
aren't.
dude. And by the way, dehumanization is not a necessity for this.
Nobody is dehumanizing white people by calling them cracker. You want to know why? You want to know why? You want to know why? Because there's no violence coming from that whatsoever.
That's
None.
not necessary to the definition you read, sir.
That's not necessary?
To the definition you read. Read it again.
To the definition I read that specifically says marginalized?
Doesn't say it has to be violence.
Again,
you just made that up.
Are white people...
Does it say there has to be violence? No, it doesn't. You just made that part up again. You just keep making up your new addendums to your own definition.
Be violence. What are you talking about? Racism will always be.
Then show me in the definition where that's the case. Show me in the definition where it says that violence is a necessity for racism.
Why does it have to show up in the definition for it?
Because otherwise you're making new addendums to your own definition because you're losing this debate.
What is the What has been the history of the United States?
The etymology doesn't matter. Your definition matters.
What has been the history of the United States prior to the Civil Rights Act? All the racism that we saw unfold throughout the civil rights era, throughout segregation, throughout the Jim Crow era, throughout slavery. You're telling me that just because violence doesn't show up in the racism definition,
has nothing to do with your definition.
Mean there was no violence?
I didn't say there was no violence. I said it's not a necessity to be racist.
You're implying because violence doesn't show up in the definition of racism
that it's not necessary.
Apply.
No, just as not necessary as a conditional for being racist. Why are you lying again?
Andrew Wilson is absolutely cooking this idiot. And yeah, he thinks he's far smarter than he actually is. The etymology of a word doesn't matter if in the moment you know exactly how they mean. I don't think any black person is going to care if some word didn't mean something, last week versus if you know right now it means something terrible to you, you're saying it right now. No one matters. Like faggot used to mean a bundle of sticks. But guess what? If you say it to a gay person, they're going to get offended now because that's the meaning of the word now. No one cares how it was used way back when all of us were not alive. People only care about the definition, as Andrew Wilson pointed out, of what it is right now. So this guy's making an argument, a defense that no one is either making or it even matters to the point. And I think it's funny because if you look at his screen, if you look at the top, it says racist victim mentality. That's exactly what this guy is. He is a racist with victim mentality, and he's going to justify treating white people differently. However, whatever mental gymnastics he needs to, he's going to justify it no matter what. But thanks again. Let me know down below in the comments what you thought about what Andrew Wilson had to say, completely obliterating this woke black activist for his double standards against white people in this heated debate. Thanks again, like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.